Hey guys, welcome back to another video on our channel Better Engineering Management. Hope you all are doing good and you have a good time. So today we are going to talk about domain driven design, which is often known as DDD. It's a very interesting topic, but we are not going to go through all those minute details of the design technique, but rather what I would like to do is we will discuss those aspects of domain driven design which are slightly undiscussed. We will also discuss why domain driven design, in spite of being one of the oldest design and modeling techniques, is still not adopted as much, and what are the trade-offs that you should be very careful about when you are going to kind of start using domain driven design. Okay, and also we would discuss like what is the essence of domain driven design, why domain driven design. Often what happens is when we start thinking about domain driven design, we quickly jump onto what kind of tools we can use, what kind of languages we can use, and we should be a bit careful with domain driven design, because what can happen otherwise is you can start using domain driven design and you can start retrofitting it, or I should say force fitting it into your current project, which may not be a good idea. First thing in my mind, if I think about domain driven design, there are three most important aspects of domain driven design. Okay, and let us go through them one by one. The first aspect of domain driven design that is extremely important is communication. Okay, one of the most important aspects of domain driven design is communication. Now what does it mean? It means that when you design your code or when you write code, right, the domain specific functionalities, the domain specific or various business logics, they should surface above the code. Okay, those parts of the code should not be into some third party utility functions. So if you are, let's say, writing a function to calculate the, for the sake of example, let's say mileage of a car. Okay, now you can write a simple function called calculate, just a fraction. The function name can be calculate fraction, where distance driven by the car can be the denominator, and the amount of petrol that has been used can be in the denominator, right? And you can find out what is the mileage of the car. But instead of calling it calculate fraction or calculate percentage or whatever, what DDD says is this logic to calculate mileage should be something called as important function called domain service. Now domain service is an old term, don't worry too much about the term. The idea is that this function is not some utility function which should sit into some just some random part of the code. This function, this should be at the forefront of your code, because this is one of your core business logics and it should be named appropriately. So there should be a function called calculate mileage, okay, something like that. And the idea is that this logic of calculating mileage, you may keep changing, you may keep decorating it with multiple other options or whatever variables. And if somebody comes across the code, he should be able to see how are you calculating the mileage of the car. Okay, we are just taking mileage as an example. It should not be key mileage is equal to calculate fraction. The function should not be named as calculate fraction and put into some utility function. That main function where you are calculating mileage should surface into one of the important files of your code. Okay, similarly, whatever is important, okay, whatever is the business logic, whatever are the entities that you are using, the important aspects of those entities should be easily visible in your code. They should not be hidden into some deeper layers of the code. Okay, and basically the important aspects of your domain that you are modeling, that should be easily navigable, and there should be a proper mechanism to kind of walk through the code in such a way that all the domain specific entities, the domain specific functions that you are offering, the domain specific utilities that you have built, they should be visible. Okay, now this point is not generally mentioned anywhere, but I think this is important because the communication, your code should communicate what it is doing about the domain, what are the important aspects of your domain. Okay, so the first point is communication. Second point in my mind about, there is this concept called aggregates, you might be aware, where basically what DDD says, it's a tactical tool, it's a tactical method on how you should kind of relate the entities. That is, if there is, let's say, brand name, okay, let's say Honda, and there are multiple cars of Honda, right? So the actual model and the brand are related to each other, right? So there is a relationship with them, one-to-many relationship. Aggregates specify how two entities should be related and what are the constraints in those relationships. That is it a one-to-many relationship? It's a many-to-many relationship. I'm just giving one example. Basically, it gives restraints, okay? And you are supposed to model these constraints inside your when you are defining the entity. In those definitions, you are also supposed to code the restraints, okay? We have to be careful here, because what it can mean is you may start writing code in such a way that you want to ensure the integrity of the model is maintained, right? Entity is maintained, but you can also end up writing code that is too restrictive, okay? In the world of microservices, let's say, where brands, management of brands could be a separate microservice, management of the actual models of the car could be a separate microservice, and if you want all of them to talk to each other, right, this one-to-many relationship, if you place it at a wrong level, let's say the DB level or at some other level which is not scalable, so many a times what happens is you will see these recommendations where people would often say that all these restrictions should be put into the domain file, which is nothing but your entity file. An entity file in your actual DB calls, where you are inserting, saving, persisting, updating the various aspects, various parameters, various properties of the object, right? There you have to put all these checks where all the constraints are being satisfied and all the related entities are, the integrity of the entities and their relationship is maintained. If you know the essence of this aspect, right, that the relationship of these entities should be maintained, the integrity should be maintained, in my mind, you will always figure out a way to do that. You don't need to really follow the recommended, coding patterns. Those coding patterns may not be very relevant today in the world of microservices, and you may end up unnecessarily fitting this pattern into your code and kind of make it difficult to scale the services later. Also, you may end up writing a lot of code in entity files, which may not be a good idea because the business logic may not naturally fit there. So that also you should be careful. If it fits, if it's all right and it's a small relationship and you think both the entities or multiple entities kind of fit there, that's perfectly fine. But if it is not fitting and in your mind you know that later different properties of those entities will start causing issues, scaling those relationships will start causing issues, don't do that. Don't follow the tactical model just for the sake of it, is what I'm trying to say. If all the developers who are developing this code know that this particular relationship has to be maintained, it can be maintained at different levels. Also, you will have to find a way at the API level, at the microservice level, and of course by writing the logic more carefully. So that's what I'm trying to say. Now, third important aspect of domain-driven design is essentially separation of entities based on the nature of the entities. Now, what does it mean? It means that certain aspects of an entity are relevant in a certain context. Outside that context, those aspects of that entity may not be relevant. Okay. For example, coming back to let's say our example of the cars. When we are kind of discussing about the mileage and performance of the car, right? It's basically evaluation of the performance aspects of the car. So you may develop a service which is purely focused on this aspect of the car, which is like based on the performance of the car. You want to develop some functions and you want to kind of take various parameters like the distance that has been driven by the car, the weight of the car, the engineering that has went into manufacturing the car, all those things which directly or indirectly contribute to the mileage of the car, and all those things may fit perfectly into a certain entity, and all those entities may be kind of conducive to the calculation of mileage and related aspects of the car. But let's take another area of the car. So let's say you have created an entity called car, and inside that car entity you are computing the mileage and all other performance related aspects of the car. Now you want to find out pricing of the car. Okay, you want to deal with the pricing of the car based on the various aspects of the car, like what are the features that the car offers. Features can be like what engine it has, whether it has sunroof or not, whether it has uh, what kind of transmission it has, and many other parameters. Right now, if you think about it, the mileage related aspects and the pricing related aspects, they do have few things in common, but the main aspect, the main behavior is pretty different. Okay, the way the pricing is calculated can involve different aspects of the car, whereas the mileage can involve completely different aspects of the car. So if you use the same car entity in both the places, in both the services, it will create confusion and issues. So what DDD says is certain aspects of the domain are relevant in a certain context. So your domain context is very important, and you should design your entities as per the expectations of the domain context. Okay, so in the mileage context, the car entity may have separate variables, separate aspects, separate properties which are relevant, and in the pricing aspect, you may not want to reuse the same car object, or even if you want to use the same car object, you may use it very thin layer, and the other important aspects of the car should be kind of developed into this particular domain context. Okay, the pricing domain context should individually deal with all the other aspects of the car which are relevant to the pricing. So these three are, I think, the most important. These three are the essence of domain-driven design in my mind. Communication: your code should communicate exactly what is the business logic, and anyone should be able to follow through it. Of course, it builds on design principles, design clean code principles and all. But DDD, in my mind, is very particular about it. Okay, the communication part of the code. Domain-specific things should be communicated properly. Second thing is, as I said, the aggregates concept, which is a tactical model, essentially a tactical design technique. I would say don't worry too much about it. You should find a way to kind of implement those restraints and constraints which aggregates suggest, but not be too bogged down about it. Shouldn't kind of try to just force fit that into your code. And third, as we mentioned, the domain context. The idea of domain context is very important. You should deeply understand it. Otherwise, making a large product using the DDD techniques will become difficult. Okay. Coming back to technologies, in my mind, all the technologies and libraries which are offered, you should stay away from them. You should just find out a way to implement these three things which I've already mentioned, and this should be doable in any language, in any framework. The frameworks which are ready-made are often, they just hold on to a certain aspect of DDD and kind of force you to write code into a certain way, which may not be scalable, where you may not be able to apply the the design principles like solid and all those things. So I would say even unit testing might be difficult with those frameworks, and so I don't have any framework or language in my mind which deeply enhances creation of DDD. I have not came across it. If you have came across, do let me know. And so I would say don't worry too much about any ready-made frameworks or languages. If you have these basic aspects of the DDD in your mind, you will find a way to kind of implement it. Okay. That's all we had today. You guys, what do you guys think? Is there any aspect of DDD where you would actually like to kind of want to have a broader discussion? Do let me know. And I believe we have also discussed why adoption of DDD is hard, because the DDD tactics, though they are easy to kind of read through, but implementing them can be very difficult. And if you think about it, a lot of them directly or indirectly do get covered when you apply certain principles like microservices. Microservices, the way you design microservices, if it is very, very thought through, in a way, a lot of aspects of DDD do get covered there. Okay, whether it is separation of domain context, or putting all the entity specific restraints. So with certain bit of common sense and kind of sharp focus on the main essence of DDD, you will be covered anyway. So do let me know what else we should discuss. Thank you for watching. Okay.